can't wait for this weather to get better because I can't wait to walk outside.
I know, I like going for walks, but if we're in Texas, in a certain part of Texas, we may end up vanished.
What?
Yes, today's episode, we're going to talk about the killing fields in Texas. You're going to want to check out this.
With this new system, we can travel to and from the human world.
I'm ready. Wow. So this is what I look like in the human world. This is pretty nice. We will have to visit more often. What do you think, Agent Wells?
I have to agree with you, Agent Owens. This human world is pretty nice, and I would definitely come back here.
I'm glad to be back.
You're sure you want to be in a human world?
I don't know.
To...
I think I like him better in anime world. So let us know what you think. I think we're going to keep them in the animated world. But that was pretty cool. That was something a little different they had in store for us today. So pretty cool. Let's introduce ourselves.
It's your girl, Shua.
And I'm Ed, and we are Studio 70. And before we get started...
This is for education, entertainment purposes only. Please do your own research and always be kind to everyone, friends, family, strangers.
Everyone, everywhere. And if you're new here, again, thank you so much. We really appreciate you joining in. And that's our Crime Force team. They're going to join us in a little bit. But let's get started here. Okay, vanished in Texas. Okay, this is about the Texas killing fields. Wow. And again, we have our Crime Force team.
Give us some background on this.
There we go. Here we are. And so for those that are new, we have these characters. They're called the Crime Force, and they are an AI investigation team. So not only are they created by AI, but we use AI tools, and they do research and bring it forward to us. So let's get some background on this case. So
Agent Owens and Agent
Owens on the left, and Agent Wells on the right. All right. Okay, my clicker is not working, so I think maybe if I turn... No, it should be on. Oh, maybe if I turned it on. There we go. See, we are live.
The Texas killing fields refers to a rural, desolate area off Interstate 45 between Houston and Galveston, Texas, where the bodies of at least 30 young women and girls have been discovered since the early 1970s.
That's a lot.
The area is swampy, remote, and difficult to search, making it a perfect dumping ground for killers. Many of these cases remain unsolved, leading to speculation that multiple serial killers may have been active in the area over the decades.
Like copycats, probably.
Geography of the Texas killing fields. The area is an isolated, swampy, and overgrown field off Calder Road, near League City, Texas. The terrain is difficult to search, making it an ideal location for criminals to dispose of bodies.
Gross.
Nearby Interstate 45, I-45, runs between Houston and Galveston, often called the Highway of Hell due to the high number of disappearances and murders in the region. The proximity to the Gulf of Mexico and oil industry led to transient workers, making it harder to track potential suspects.
What I'm surprised there is, first off, how long this has been going on for, number one. Number two is how many people were involved or murdered, and the idea that there could be more than one serial killer, which is interesting. We haven't really heard that too often in our cases.
Right, so these seem like these are cold cases, right? And that's what I'm gathering.
A lot of these, yeah.
Yeah, so...
Well,
that's
yeah,
interesting,
I think
it was pretty short. I really wanted to get a little bit more of understanding.
Well, they're going to go through the decades of crime, so they'll go through some of
1970s, the first wave of murders. Let's first discuss the cases from 1971. In 1971, the first known victims linked to the Texas killing fields were discovered. Colette Anise Wilson, 13 years old, disappeared on June 17, 1971, after her mother picked her up from band camp and dropped her off at a bus stop in Alvin, Texas. Her body was found 5 months later near Addicks Reservoir in Houston, with a gunshot wound to the head.
Oh, wow.
Brenda Jones, 14 years old, went missing on July 1, 1971, after leaving her Galveston home to visit her aunt in the hospital. Her body was found the next day in Galveston Bay, tied up and weighted down.
Oof.
Gloria Ann Gonzalez, 19 years old, disappeared on October 28, 1971, from Houston. Her remains were found on November 23, 1971, near Addicks Reservoir, the same area where Colette Wilson was discovered. Rhonda Johnson, 14 years old, and Sharon Shaw, 13 years old, disappeared together on August 4, 1971, while walking near Galveston Bay. Their skeletal remains were found in a marsh area on January 3, 1972. Many of the victims were young girls or teenagers, often last seen near bus stops, beaches, or highways. Some of the bodies were found in the same general areas, suggesting a serial killer or multiple killers could be responsible. Over 30 victims were found in the Texas killing fields from 1971 to the early 2000s, and most cases remain unsolved. Now on to the 1980s, more victims, still no answers. During the 1980s, the Texas killing fields continued to be a dumping ground for victims, primarily young women and teenage girls. Many of these cases remain unsolved, though authorities have linked a few to known suspects. Below are some of the most notable victims from that decade. Heidi Fye, 23 years old. Last seen, April 1983, in League City, Texas. Discovery: her remains were found in 1984 in a field near Calder Road, an area later known as the Killing Fields.
Yep, right in that same
She was a
area.
waitress in League City. She disappeared while walking to a convenience store.
Unbelievable.
Her remains were the first body officially linked to the Texas Killing Fields name. Cause of death remains unclear but is suspected to be homicide. Laura Miller, 16 years old. Last seen, September 10, 1984, at a gas station in League City.
It's weird. It's the
Discovery:
same.
her remains were found in February 1986, near where Heidi Fye was discovered.
Like 70s in one spot.
She had
80s
recently
in
moved to League City and was using a payphone when she disappeared. She was later found badly decomposed in the same field as Fye. Her father, Tim Miller, founded Texas EquiSearch, a search and recovery organization, to help find missing persons. This case is one of the most well-known Texas killing fields cases. Audrey Lee Cook, 30 years old. Identified in 2019.
Wow.
Last seen, unknown.
2019.
Discovery: her remains were found in February 1986, near Laura Miller. For years, she was known as Jane Doe until DNA identified her in 2019. Cook was a mechanic from Texas. She had no known connection to the other victims, leading to theories of multiple killers. Cause of death remains unclear.
Yeah.
Donna Prudhomme, 34 years old. Identified in 2019. Last seen, unknown. Discovery: her remains were found in September 1991, near Calder Road, the same area as Miller, Fye,
Hold on, it says
and Cook.
2019, 1991.
She remained a Jane Doe until 2019, when DNA identified her. She had reportedly been living in League City before her disappearance. She was likely killed in the late 1980s but wasn't found until years later. 1990s victims. Crystal Jean Baker, 13 years old. Last seen, March 5, 1996, in Texas City, Texas. Discovery: her body was found later that same day under a bridge along Interstate 10. Crystal was walking to a friend's house when she was abducted. She was essayed, strangled, and dumped under the bridge. Her case was unsolved for 16 years until 2012, when DNA linked Kevin Edison Smith to her murder. Smith was arrested and sentenced to life in prison. Jessica Kane, 17 years old. Last seen, August 17, 1997, after having dinner with friends in Clear Lake, Texas. Discovery: her remains were found in 2016 in a field near Houston. She was last seen driving home. but her car was later found abandoned on the side of I-45, still locked with her belongings inside. For nearly 2 decades, her case remained a mystery. In 2016, serial killer William Lewis Reese led authorities to her remains. Reese was later convicted of multiple murders. Kelly and Cox, 20 years old. Last seen July 15th, 1997, in Denton, Texas. Discovery: her remains were found in 2016, buried in the same area as Jessica Kane. Kelly was a college student who vanished after locking herself out of her car.
Or it could be coincidence.
She was believed to have been abducted and murdered by William Lewis Reese. In 2016, Reese confessed and led police to her burial site. Maria Gonzalez, 16 years old. Last seen, July 1997, in Houston, Texas. Discovery: her remains were found near League City, Texas. She was believed to have been murdered in a similar fashion to the other Texas killing fields victims. Limited information exists, and her case remains unsolved. 2000s victims.
Now at 2000.
Sarah Trusty,
Crazy,
23 years old.
Non-stop.
Last seen, July 12, 2002, in Texas City, Texas. Discovery: her remains were found 2 weeks later, in a marsh near the Texas killing fields. She was last seen riding her bicycle. Her case remains unsolved. Tiffany Taylor, 16 years old. Last seen, July 2006, in Dickinson, Texas. Discovery: her remains were found later that year in the Texas killing fields area. Not much is publicly known about her case. She is believed to have been murdered, but no arrests have been made. Janet Doe, unidentified, found in 2019. Last seen, unknown. Discovery: remains were found in 2019 in League City.
Wow.
This woman is yet
Another
to be
one.
identified. DNA testing is ongoing.
Wow.
That's crazy.
That was an exhausting list.
Did you see the pattern though of all of the?
Yeah, it seemed like it was, what was the first one? I missed it now. I don't think it was gas stations was the second one. The first one, I forgot now.
So after the gas station, I guess maybe was walking to their friend's house in the woods, right?
I think
seen that one.
the first one seemed to be a certain spot that they were left.
Bus stop.
Maybe it was a bus stop.
It was
I
the bus
apologize, guys. My brain, I'm thinking of too
So
many
it was the
things at
bus
once.
stop, and one said the mother
It
dropped
was
her
a
daughter
gas
off
station.
at the bus stop. She was only 14 years old. That was the first. So it's bus stop.
It seems like it's multiple. It's probably a famous, or not so I say famous. Probably seemed like a most likely place to put people based on the terrain. It seems like there's multiple killers, possibly.
Well,
Definitely patterns, like you said.
definitely they are. It's interesting.
Well, it's so funny. I didn't even mean to do this. I said there's possibly many killers, and then possible suspects and aftermath. Sorry, I wasn't even. See, my mind is already thinking about like over the decades, some coincidences, some similarities, but I don't think it's one person.
No, it's like a copycat, right? But
Or multiple people just said, "Hey, if I'm going to commit, this is a great place to dump somebody. Nobody's ever going to know." Well, let's see. And then I'm going to get your reaction after.
Several men have been investigated, with some considered strong suspects. However, no single person has been definitively tied to all the murders.
Yeah. Oh.
Edward Harold Bell, a convicted murderer who confessed in prison to killing 11 young girls in the 1970s.
Disgusting.
He called them the 11 that went to heaven. Despite his confessions, no solid evidence linked him to the crimes.
He goes to, where?
Clyde Hedrick, convicted of manslaughter in 1984 for the death of Ellen Beeson, whose body was found in a Texas field. He was suspected but never convicted for other Texas killing fields murders. William Lewis Reese, convicted serial rapist and murderer. In 2015, DNA linked him to multiple murders, including some along I-45. He remains in prison but has not been officially tied to all Texas killing fields cases. Kevin Edison Smith. Arrested in 2012 for the 1996 murder of Crystal Jean Baker, after DNA evidence linked him to the crime. Sentenced to life in prison. Investigation challenges. Several factors have made solving the Texas killing fields murders difficult. Lack of forensic technology in the early years.
Yeah, of course.
Different law enforcement agencies worked on cases independently, delaying progress. The high number of transient people in the area, making suspects harder to track. Many bodies were found decomposed, making cause of death hard to determine. DNA and forensic genealogy have helped identify victims, e.g., Audrey Cook and Donna Prudhomme. Police and FBI continue to investigate new leads. Some families are still waiting for justice decades later. The Texas Killing Fields case has inspired numerous films, documentaries, and books, including movie, Texas Killing Fields, 2011,
I
a
didn't even know that.
fictionalized account starring Sam Worthington and Jeffrey Dean Morgan. Netflix documentary, Crime Scene, The Texas Killing
Oh, we gotta
Fields,
check that out.
2022, a deep dive into the mystery. Books, several true crime books have covered the case, helping bring public attention. The Texas Killing Fields remain one of the most disturbing and unsolved serial murder cases in U.S. history. Despite some suspect arrests and victim identifications, many cases remain open, with families desperate for closure.
Well, thank you, Crime Force, again. That was a lot of information, especially on the victims. So thank you so much. I am going to sneeze right now, so I'll mute my mic for a second if I can sneeze. Sorry, guys. I turned to me and go. All right. Start with Chirac. Gotta wake her up.
Yes, so this is definitely an interesting case. What I find interesting is that there has been a pattern, and it's been years, it's been decades, they can't find these bodies. When someone dies in Texas, and then that's the first place I'm going to look, don't you think? I'm like, let's look over. I understand, and it should be some traps over there or something. I don't know what to say, but it just seems like history just kept repeating itself in that same field of the Houston, Texas. It's just mind-boggling, because how can, okay, maybe the first 30, they said 30 murders been there. Like, really,
Oh, yeah, and
maybe
that's
the
what they
5,
know
6,
of.
7, exactly. So don't you think you should say, okay, let me just make sure that this seems like something everyone is using as a dump site to dump their bodies.
Monitor it
Or something, or have something out there. I don't know.
I don't know.
Just, build up the tent.
It's hard because it's a huge area. I mean, now with today's technology, to your point, you might be able to have some kind of like those cameras where only if you go near it, it trips or something.
Yeah.
It definitely and of course, too, let's face it, when people talk about either killers talking about other killers or stuff on TV or, the news saying, oh, we found these bodies here. And so it might, like say somebody in the 90s might have said, hey, in the 70s, 80s, these guys used to kill and leave them over in this area of the fields. I'm going to put my bodies over there too, because they won't know if it's me or somebody else. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why it could happen. It's just very sad. I mean, 30 plus, and that's what they know of.
And what is the distance? Like, where are they being murdered at?
It seemed like it was a few towns, the League, Texas City, and there's another one. So it seems like it's all in the same area.
Exactly, on the same area. So that's something that you probably need to monitor more.
And if you live there and you have children, or even if you're an adult, because you can see 20s and 30s, keep a taser or something with you. Just keep an open mind, that if you live in that area, you can't live in fear, but just be prepared. Because there'll still be copycats and there'll be people who get ideas, unfortunately.
But one thing I couldn't understand is said that a mother dropped her child off at the bus stop and the child was 14 years old. I don't know if sometimes, I don't know.
I mean, it depends if it was a bus stop at school or who knows. I mean, you want to say that, 14, you shouldn't have to worry about your kids, but unfortunately, it's
Yeah, I know. I did a lot of things younger than that. I was going to different
yes,
boroughs at the
Shirok,
age
we
of 12, but
know.
it's just I don't know.
We know you're a bad kid. No, I'm kidding. It's decent.
Just curious.
Oh, thank you guys for joining us on this one. A little bit of a sad story to this involving, a lot of young kids as well. But come back and see Crime Force. Come back and see us. We just want you to join
Yeah.
us as we go through these cases. If you could subscribe and like, it only takes 2 seconds. I know you hear it all the time on these stations, but it does really help us, especially because we're still young and growing on channel-wise, and we really appreciate it.
Yes, we do appreciate you.
And until next time, come join us next week on
Studio 70.
Okay, we'll see ya.